Hey guys, what's up? It's Twisted here. This is our raw cap footage that we got of our first kill of Feng, the Accursed, in 10-man. So I did this encounter as Holy. I didn't actually try a whole lot of different strategies this time around like I did for the first boss. As you can see, I took Cascade as my level 90 talent. That's really important because there's a lot of key moments where people are spread out where that's going to do the most healing, and it's on a short enough cooldown that it's going to be useful for all of them. This encounter is more of a healer check type encounter, but it's also a coordination execution type encounter with coordinating your raid cooldowns and the special abilities that your tank will pick up. The dot he's putting on the tank will force a tank swap, so you need at least 2, and we actually underhealed it with 2 healers instead of 3. I believe it's supposed to be 3 healed, but we just brute forced it and did some high DPS. So this encounter is basically in 3 phases. This first phase, you can see that we're stacking up in the middle every time he does this epicenter. That's basically the only thing you really have to worry about in the first phase. There's a tank swap throughout the encounter. They have to juggle that debuff that's going out to them, but otherwise the tank's critical rolls is they pick up these additional things on the ground, and one of them is a raid cooldown that nullifies all of the damage. It's on a 1-minute cooldown. When they pick up the abilities, it'll appear in their extra action button. So what we're doing here is in between each epicenter, we're stacking up in the center of the room. Epicenter does the more damage, the closer you are to it, but we're also trying to minimize the amount we're trying to run back and forth between the boss and this epicenter ability, so we're not losing too much DPS, because this first phase, I mean, when you don't have that tank cooldown from the thing they pick up on the ground, since the 1-minute cooldown, you have to time other healer cooldowns with the epicenters when that tank cooldown is down, and so that's what we're doing here. We're alternating a Divine Hymn and a Tranquility rotation, and we have to do it in 5 epicenters, otherwise we screwed up, because if we go into a 6th, we have no healer cooldown for it, and there's no way we can keep people alive through it. So, and we also tried maybe pushing a 6 to do the encounter, pushing it a little bit, but there's just, nothing compares to an actual healer cooldown like Tranquility or Divine Hymn. Like, we had our Shadow Priest take Trank through Symbiosis and still wasn't enough. So that's how you do this first phase. You basically do it in 5 epicenters or death. That's why we're 2 healing this encounter, and that's how we timed the tank cooldown that he can drop when he picks it up. It's the null barrier. He drops it every odd time, and then in the even times, I Divine Hymn the first, our Druid Tranquility is the second. And then you get pushed into the second phase. The one thing I can say of note about this first phase is if you're a DPS class, you need to watch out for this thing he stomps on the ground. It's called lightning. He charges his lightning fist and then he throws it in a direction. Don't get caught by that, because it's really important for healers to save their mana during this phase, because the healer check, and that's what this fight is, comes in the second phase, and we need to be going into it in full mana. As you can see here, when we're going into the second phase, I use my potion at the beginning of it because I want to make sure I'm as close to full as I can so I don't have to spend time digging around with mana during it. Okay, so second phase, he picks out a new weapon, and in this phase he'll put these little buffs on you. They're kind of like Jirax's fire, those type of abilities. It puts you a little fire trail, and it places this buff on the ground called Wildfire that you can't stand in that. And then the other ability he's going to be doing is every 30 seconds or so, he's going to suck all of the wildfire that's out in the ground and then charge it to his sword, and then once the sword starts hitting melee, like hitting your tank basically, it's going to start just doing massive fire damage, as you can see. Now the null barrier, since it also negates all damage going to the raid, it negates damage done to him, and that includes effects that are done to him. It's like an immunity barrier. So as you can see, we dropped the barrier the first time around, and all of the wildfire that should have gone to his sword gets sucked up to the barrier, and it doesn't actually charge his sword because he was standing in his null barrier. So you have to set up that rotation, but it's quicker than 1 minute apart, so you have to, it's unavoidable that he's going to stack that fire damage. Basically, it was really tight timing-wise. We wanted to get through this phase with as little of those stacks going into the next phase as possible, so we actually kind of stalled DPS at the end of this phase, even though we hero rushed the first, and that's to try to get the stacks to fall off his sword before we go into phase 3. Now, you can see here, he just charged his sword. There was no way to immunity it, so the healer and I are going to start rolling our cooldowns. You see, I unfortunately got chose for Wildfire right as this phase started, and this is I have to use my Divine Hymn first, and so what I'm trying to do by using Power Infusion is I'm trying to delay using Divine Hymn as much as possible. Cascade is amazing for this part because you can cast it on the melee group and it'll just bounce back and forth between melee and range, and you can do a ton of healing per second with it. It's really important to refresh your Light Spring. It's really important to watch the timer on Prayer of Mending, and it's also really important to watch your tanks because they're still swapping targets. So as you can see, our druid's trying to switch switch that life bloom stack back and forth, like wait for him to get out of tree form. But you can see he's trying to like manage the tanks, and so am I. I'm trying to like make sure that I get a renew or something on them every now and so often, so that they don't just like get instant gibbed because we weren't paying attention. So this is, I mean, this is like where the healer check comes in. If we were 3 healing this, it's almost trivial, but we're 2 healing it, and we go into this next phase with minimal stacks. We've pushed that phase with 20 stacks before, and it's just undoable. So you can see the fire stacks are still going on. This is what you want to try to minimize going into the 3rd phase. Now the 3rd phase has 2 mechanics once he picks up his new weapon, or these 2 arcane mechanics. The one that he's casting on our ranged right now, you can see it has a 6-yard radius that pretty much like one-shots you if there's 2 people grouped up. Like, it does only 10k damage per second, but if you're within range of somebody, it'll double and it'll do that damage to both people, and it's per second. So if you drop that in your raid, it's an insta-wipe. It's very unforgiving. And then this is his other ability. He'll start charging this arcane storm, and you have to step into the null barrier and clump up for like AoE healing, and you want to keep rotating AoE healing cooldowns during that as well. So we null barriered the first one, we all stacked up, didn't have to spend any heavy cooldowns. This next barrier, that the next time he does an arcane storm, we're gonna have to stack up and we're gonna have to heal through it. And I'm actually out of healing cooldowns. It's like my turn to use a healing cooldown, so we're actually having DPS do their personals or anything that they can help during that phase. So it gets really tight at the end. Mana at this point, you can see like we're getting close to running on fumes, and I actually make some pretty choice decisions here on how I'm going to manage the rest of the fight. Right about now, I looked at my mana bar, I like just used Mindbender, and I'm like, okay, there's no way I'm going to be able to finish the fight at this point, so I might be looking for an opportunity to step into something and die so I can just use the free healing from my angel form. That's what I'm thinking anyway. I thought about doing it just now, but I did a really stupid mistake and didn't decide to actually fully die, so I was like kind of half healing myself, kind of not, and I was actually sucking up the rest of the mana from my druid, who actually did manage his mana a little bit better and was going into that phase with more than me. So I actually like made a huge mistake there, but you'll see that we're getting down to the wire, and I do like unintentionally take a death here, but that's okay because I have that angel form. Next week when we try this, I'm going to unglyph Prayer of Mending, and I'm actually going to take the improved Spirit of Redemption, because I'm the one that took the most damage on anything physical this fight, and there's a lot of like physical stuff going out, and then I also seem to take the most damage on these arcane storms at the end. Like, I was the quickest to die, it felt like, so I might be spending some extra time in Spirit of Redemption, and it is 40 seconds of mana free healing before I need a battle res. I don't know, it's just something to consider, but much more straightforward than the first fight, and I thought it was much easier as well. We only took, I think, 11 attempts on it.